That's kind of some things that you mentioned in your prayer relate to some things that I want to do tonight. Tonight is not a teach the techniques needed to do genealogy research. Instead, I'm going to share with you two experiences that I have had that convinced me that our Father in heaven will give us the help we need to do his work in order to prepare the data needed to have the temple work done for those people that we love because they are our ancestors, and that we will love more when we get a chance to get acquainted with them in the life after this one. So I think I'm going to begin by telling you about my daughter coming to visit. My daughter came to visit just after Diane taught her last class on how to do descendancy research and make sure that your family work is done. And just after Roots Tech. And as Roots Tech was preparing, I had the thought in my mind, oh, Roots Tech is this year going to be all over the world, and it's going to be presented in 10 different languages. Probably one of those languages will be Portuguese. I ought to look up which classes about Brazilian research in Portuguese are going to be available and tell them to my son-in-law, because after they visit us, they're going to go visit his parents. And his mother always tells me that she wishes her husband would take the responsibility to do the Brazilian research for their family. And so my son-in-law and daughter were here, and I cornered my son-in-law and I said, oh, I want to teach you about how to do descendancy research. And he said, oh, well, what I want to do is, our stake president has requested that, or challenged each member of the stake. They now live for the first time in their life close to a temple. They live about 15 minutes from the Kansas City, Kansas temple. When they lived in Germany, they were hours from a temple. When they lived in Maryland, the nearest temple was Washington, D.C., which was only like an hour or so away. When they were in Kentucky, it was further away. When they were in Southern California, it was further away. And now they don't have as many small children, so they are at a point in their life when they can get more temple work done. So yes, the Kansas City temple is in Missouri. It's in Clay County, Missouri. It is in the town of Liberty. We know that from church history because we know the stories about Joseph Smith being in the Liberty jail. So they live very close to the Liberty jail and Adamond and Far West and all of those church history places. Anyway, so I sat him down and I tried to, I got a little sidetracked, teach him about how to do descendancy research so that he could, first a back step. He was telling me that his stake president has challenged them that the first week that the temple is open, he wants all of the youth of the stake to take a family research name to the temple and be baptized for them. The second week the temple is open, he wants everybody all the adults in the stake to take a family research name that was baptized the previous week and do the initiatory. The following week, he wants them to do the endowments. And the week after that, he wants them to do the sealings. And so he wants that to be their stake goal. So my son-in-law was much more interested in doing his stake goal than he was learning how to do descendancy research. And he said, I know there's a telephone app that you use to do that. And I said, yes, there is. It's called Take a Name. And you and I have talktalked about it in years past. It has some flaws. It has some things. I'd like to teach you some better techniques. That's why I want you to watch this lesson from my friend Diane with me. And there's also a new one called Hope Chest, and we could use that app, but let's see if we can do Diane's lesson. He really wasn't interested in doing Diane's lesson. He was more interested in learning about how to use the family. Is there a family search app? Well, how does it work? So we talked a little bit about that. And we opened up, it became time to open up on my computer because it's easier for me to see on the computer than on the app. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a little bit about what we did. So I said, well, do you know your login to Family Search? And he said, oh, you know, and he kind of flustered for a few minutes. And I said, okay, Brian, the easiest way to do it then is to go to Family Tree and go to the tree, and then we'll go to Find, because I can find your grandmother, even though I'm not related to her because she's dead. So I don't have to have your login. So we typed in her name. What is her name? Abigail. And he thought probably De Santos was her maiden name. And she's a female, and she's married, and her spouse is, well, was, Lauren Mack. Now, Brian is under the opinion that most of the Mack family work is done because Lauren Mack's ancestor is Solomon Mack, and Solomon Mack is the father of Lucy Mack Smith. So he believes that most of that work has been done. So just knowing that much about Abigail, we filled out those dates on that template, and this is what we got. The very first entry was Maria. Now in Brazil, nearly every girl is given the first name of Maria. Abigail de Almeida, and that Alameda, and that probably means that was her mother's last name. And Santos, which would have been her father's last name, married to Lauren Mack, born in Brazil, died in Boise, Idaho, and buried in Boise, Idaho. Yes, that matches what we know about her. So we clicked on her name, and then we clicked on her name again to get it to open up to her page. And Brian tells me, my mother has put in a few things, but she does not want to put anything in until it's proven. And she received lots of old photographs from her family. His mother received photographs from Abigail's family, and she had gone through the photographs and other things that Abigail had told her through the years, and had put them all in a database called Roots Magic. So she has her Roots Magic database, which is private. That means nobody else has access to it except Brian's mother. But yes, here was Maria, Abigail, and the data information about her is there. And as we look on this immediately, we can see that, I've got to get back to the top of the page, that Tanya Mack, who is his mother, has added things and changed things as recently as 2019. And James Mack did something in 2019. Who is James Mack? They have a son named James Turner. Is that him? I don't know if that's him or not. Brian's father is Roger. So Roger had entered the death date, and for the reason he said, I'm her son, and I know that that's where she was when she died. So that information is there. So we can tell that his mother and father have indeed put in some information about his grandmother. Now, when we go down to the bottom and we see that no children are listed. Well, why are no children listed? Because all of the children are still alive. Oh, okay, that makes sense. But look, it lists her parents, and it listed 2 children. Abigail was listed, as was Maria Louisa. And so we looked up Abigail and to see or back to her temple work to look at her temple ordinances. And Brian said, we've already done her temple work. And sure enough, they did her temple work. She was baptized 2 years before she died. She was not young at that time. But as she and her husband were aging, they became ready to listen to the gospel. My son-in-law's parents, father joined the church while he was a teenager. We can see that the temple work was done. And so Roger says, see, that's already done. I don't need to worry about it anymore. Okay, but let's just take a look at the sources and see what the sources are. And he said, my mother didn't put anything in because she doesn't want to put anything in until it's all perfect, till she knows it's all complete. So we just went ahead and looked, and we find that some things have been done after all. Here is an entry for a California birth index for Roger, my son-in-law's father. And it has unfinished attachments. Roger also found that his mother was in find a grave, so he's done some research. Found a Social Security death index for her. That probably came as a hint in Family Search. The same with Social Security death index, and maybe even city directories. Oh, this is very interesting. Down here at the bottom is a civil registration entry for Abigail from when she was born in Brazil. Now that is very interesting, and that is more information than Brian didn't know that there was an official birth certificate for his grandmother. And we're going to want to come back later and look at this unfinished attachments. That means there was something in that record, in that birth certificate record, that James Mack 56 didn't realize was part of the family. And so we're going to want to go back and look at that later. Anyway, as we were talking, Brian got up and left the room. And I thought we were making progress with his family history. So I was kind of disappointed that he didn't even care enough to tell me about it, but he got up and left the room. So later in the night, he said, now what would I do next? And we talked about, I could kind of tell he wasn't ready to be attaching records. So we talked about what things he could look at and why, if he did attach records, it would be good to do because they are official records, even if you don't have all of the pictures of the story yet, which was what his mother said she had to have. And he seemed very open to that suggestion. And he said, I want to talk to my dad about this when we go visit. So after they had gone to visit his dad, so he visited his dad on March 20th. And my daughter calls me later in the week and she said, I don't know if you realize why Brian left the room when you and he were talking about family history. He left the room because he had an overwhelming feeling, testimony in his system, as he explained it later, from my core down to my toes, that it was my responsibility to do the family work now for Abigail's family. So when he got to Mesquite and was talking to his dad, he said, I'd like to talk to you about getting the temple work done for your mom's brothers and sisters. And his dad said, we don't know anything about them. And so they opened up Family Search and looked, and look, there are 4 children, not 2. When Brian and I looked, there were 2. So he looks up the brother, and he sees, as he looks at all of the information about the brother, this information was added March 21st. I guess it was, so he first got there on Saturday. This is Sunday, March 21st. He's talking to his father, and this is what he finds. Those names were added the same day. Now, is this person somebody in Brazil? We kind of were guessing that. And it says, send a message. His dad sent a message to Sylvia, who he believes to be a man, and who we both believe is in Brazil, and has not yet heard back from her. I think it's a her. But as he looked later, he sees that rather recently, a different child, and I forget which one it was. Let's think maybe it was Maria. Maria has all green, a green temple, which says that, according to Family Search, there's enough information already here for temple work, as long as he can show that he is the nearest relative. But the other two children, even though they were very recently added, do not have temple work done. And theirs needs a little bit more information than that one needed. Let's see what it says. It says it needs a standardized birthplace. Okay, so let's just look. This person, whose middle name is Nazaree, has two sources. What are her sources? Her sources are probably the same thing. It is her Brazilian birth certificate. So if we go back to her father and look up all of the children, we will find that all of the children have listed a Brazilian birth certificate as their source. Probably somebody was clicking on the blue links on their pedigree chart, found the blue link to the Brazilian birth certificates, which had been indexed, and attached them. So let's see. All of those just need permission. Some of the others need standardized dates and places. Shouldn't those standardized dates and places be in a birth certificate? Now, what do you do if you have a birth certificate and you do not speak Portuguese? Somebody give me an answer. Somebody turn off your, yes, Michelle.
You go to your ward Facebook page and you put out a request saying, does anybody speak Portuguese in this ward? Because I have a need.
And so this afternoon I did that, except I already knew who it was. So I called her and said, I need you to do something for me if you would. She was thrilled that she had a skill and a talent that could help me. So here is the translation of Abigail's Brazilian birth certificate. And as you can read it on the screen, tell me, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me when you notice something that is a clue in this birth certificate. One thing of interest to me was that this birth certificate is not on a form. It is in longhand paragraph form. It was not standardized birth certificate of any kind. You know, usually a birth certificate, you would expect to see a form filled out. Let's read it together and stop me and tell me when you see something that you think is a hint of some kind, significant or not.
Her birth.
Her birth, okay. And what about her birth?
A line, like 120.
It tells us her exact birthday, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The 15th of November, 1922. And the place is São José Recife. And so because of the way that was listed down in the sources, I figured out that Recife is the place. And according to the family records of the few things they did know, she was born in Recife and in the town of Pernambuco. So she's born in Recife. She's a white female, a legitimate daughter, and her parents are listed: Emilio Carolino dos Santos and Ana de Alamido Santos. Okay, so that tells us that those are in fact both her father and her mother, that they were married before she was born, and her exact birthday and where she was born. Now, those are the wonderful things that you want to find in a birth certificate. But there's another interesting clue before that. Did any of you notice this other part? The birth certificate was made on the 29th of August, 1945. Why would somebody born in 1922 not have a birth certificate made until 1945?
They were probably immigrating or something.
That's an option. In fact, that was my initial thought, is that before, when she married Lauren Mack, she could not immigrate to the United States without a birth certificate. That was my initial thought. And that could be it. As I talked to Brian about that this afternoon, he said that there's kind of a family tradition that they lived on the coast and they kept having floods that kept flooding the Catholic Church and ruining their records. So I'm not sure really what the actual answer to this is. But her birth certificate was not made at the time of her birth. The closer a record is made to the event that it's recording, the more we trust it. So this was 22 years later. I put a lot of trust in that first paragraph anyway. Her father was a trader or a merchant, and her mother was a housewife, and they are both natural. I presume that means that
that means that they were from that location. If it's a natural birth, then that means it's illegitimate. But if it's pointing to a location, it means that they are originally from that location.
Okay, from the location, and it says up here that she is legitimate.
Right.
That is something that Catholic records very much differentiate in, is whether or not they were legitimate or not. Now the next paragraph, wow, let's read this next paragraph. Her grandparents, father's side, Manuel Carolino dos Santos and Francisca, you know I'm pronouncing everything wrong, Piera dos Santos, and her parents on her mother's side are Jose Carniero de Lima and Leopoldina Lima. For the record, the declarant and the witnesses have to sign below, and so this is who they are. So she signed Maria Abigail Alameda Santos, and then the two witnesses are Amaro de Lima and Joaquim Correa de Castro. Now, who do you think they are? Is that any kind of a hint? Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me what you think we maybe could guess by who the witnesses are.
They're relatives from the mother's side and one from the father's side.
That's my thought. My thought is that Amaro de Lima is probably one, a relative from the mother's side, and the one with the last name of Costa is a relative from the father's side. Now, so far, we have no clue who that would be. But that needs to go down on our clue list, shouldn't it? Now, if you were doing information on this record, what would be one of the things that you do next as you look at sources? My goodness, she has 18 sources. I hadn't noticed that before. Oh, and it looks like most of them also come from this same Sylvia. And it looks like that they were done on the same day. Oh, look. All kinds of people here are listed, but the attachments have not been finished. Let's look just at some of the unattached records and see what we find. Right away, it lists Maria Luisa and her husband and a child. So this is probably that child's birth record. And so they attached the record far enough along to get the parents, but they weren't quite bold enough to say, oh, I need to add this daughter. I guess Jeannie is, Jeannie's a daughter, it says daughter. Now, this is something that I don't want to do because I am not related to this person, but I am going to send my son-in-law, Brian, a list of all of these half-attached records so that he can add them. Now, what is this going to tell us? Probably Jeannie de Lama Viana is probably very likely still alive. She was born in 1937. I guess a lot of people born in 1937 are aging and are dying, but very likely she could still be alive. Yes, John, you're still alive.
Just barely.
We could ask you your birth year, or we could just say it's about there.
Who, me?
Yeah.
It's exactly 37.
Oh, okay. So if John's still alive, it's very likely that Jeannie is still alive.
Yeah. Well, most of my friends are not.
Most of your friends are not?
Yeah, can I add something to?
Yes, I want this to be a discussion.
This is most likely when they were indexed, the green folks were indexed already, and their son, the son was indexed with the parents at that time. And then another indexing group came through and found the same thing on the daughter. And so this is merely an event to bring those two together. That's why it's unfinished, or called unfinished. I run into these in Mexico all the time. So and when you look it up, that's what's happened. The Jeannie showed up, and the logarithms at Family Search will give you this so that you can go check it out to make sure, and then bring the family together, and you merge them here. And there probably a whole bunch of others with a family like this. You'll find several other people as you go and search more and click on more sources, because that's the way, they weren't able to put the logarithm to where they pulled everybody out at the same time, but as they did it one by one, this is how it shows up.
Okay, I think that is true in a lot of the cases. In this case, it also might be that she's not in Family Search because she's still alive. That is a possibility. And it's also possible that the person that indexed it was not bold enough to add her.
Well, if she's in Family Search, then
if for example, I go back to Abigail and go to Abigail's page, and if I look at Abigail's sources, I come to James Mack left unfinished attachments. Let's look at the unfinished attachment that James Mack left. Now, as I look at this, it's a California birth index, and the parents are William Lauren Mack and Abigail de Almeida Santos. And so whoever, I didn't notice who indexed this. It lists de Almeida Santos listed as one name as the mother on his birth certificate. And it does not list, according to this index, records that who the father is, but it lists that the son is William Roger William Mack, and he has not been added. Now, the reason he has not been added is he's still alive. So that's.
You can add him right now.
Yes, but since he's still alive, it won't show up to anybody except the person on his family tree that added him. So if I add him, he's going to show up on Family Search in my family and under my account only.
Right, okay.
Because he's still alive. Now, if instead we go from the birth record, if we go down to, there's another one down here, and it is Abigail's. Well, I thought there was. Oh, maybe. Okay, it's not that one.
No.
Maybe it is one of the father's sources. Let's look up the father and see. I'm trying to show you one that was attached by a beginning person, and I happen to know that beginning person. Here is one of Abigail's brothers, and it is his same record for that place in Brazil. And the person that that added the attachment is Abigail Mack. She is my granddaughter. She is my son-in-law's daughter. So here she has unfinished attachments. Now, when I look at these unfinished records, I can see that this is a birth record for Erasmo Almeida Santos, and he's already listed as starting on March 21st, which was after she indexed it. He is listed as a son. And it lists the parents.
Different
birthdays. Pardon?
Different birthdays.
Okay, look at this. This is interesting. And this is on my list for my son-in-law. And he and I talked this afternoon, and this is on his list of things to do. 3 of these children were born in 1922. I think the index are goofed. What do you think? Do you think 3 children were all born in 1922? So this record.
Is it a birth or a christening?
Since it came from civil registration,
okay.
I don't know. How do we find out?
Because if it's a christening, they could all be christened the same day.
If we look here at that, it definitely in South America could be a christening date. If they had to pay to have the christening done, they often didn't get it done on the right date.
That's right.
We can look at the record and we can see that this is what it shows. Now, as we look more closely, it even says that the birth date is April 1927. But I want to see more than that. I want to see the whole image. And I could have gone to the image from that screen. But so here's the image. And look, it's got 2 different births. And here they're in more of a form. He must have been born a few years later. So one of the things that I'm going to do tonight after we finish our class is I am going to send links to this birth certificate and all the other siblings to my Portuguese friend, my Brazilian friend, and say, would you please index these records as well? In fact, I already texted her and said, would you be willing to do more? And she said, oh yes, sister, I'd be glad to. It pleases me that a sister in my ward has the connection with me that she's willing to call me sister and is willing to help me in this way. So I can tell kind of by this thing down below that it will be this top half. Now I can either, to get her to do it, I can either come up here and click on the blue address line and do cut and paste and send her that link on an email, or I can go down here in my toolbar and I can choose snipping. And when the snipping comes up, oh, I want a new one. I hope I saved that one. A new one. And do, so then once it's turned this way, then I go like this and I make that copy. And then I do file save. And then I can put, here I can put, what was his name? Erastus?
Yeah.
Birth certificate. And then I can send that file by email to my friend.
And when I have found, when I've researched a lot of those dates, when they're not, when they're suspicious like that, it's very common that if a child dies, at birth or at very young, then the next child they have gets that same name. For example, in Janie's family of 11 kids, 2 of them are named after kids who were born and died in infancy. And then the next, in one case, it was the next son that was born was given that exactly the same name. And the next daughter that was born after the daughter died as an infant was given that exactly same name. So in her family, she's got, rather than 11 aunts and uncles, she has actually 13, including that died. So that happens a lot.
And also happened a lot in England.
Yeah.
When you're researching in and I don't know about other European countries besides England, but I suspect them as well. So when we have this document translated, we're going to get more specific information. And I believe we're going to have enough specific information that we can then do the temple work for this brother and for the other children. Now, even somebody attached a birth certificate to one of the children of this family and didn't have enough courage or enough confidence to, and maybe felt like they didn't have enough doctrine to add them at all. And so they have not been added even as of March 21st as children of that family. So my son-in-law says he talked this over with his mother, and according to his mother's Roots Magic file, which she gave him because she was glad somebody in the family was being more active than what she perceived her husband to be. 12 children are listed in this family, and we now have a record of 5. So there's more to be done. So now I'm going to open up a discussion question. Is it appropriate to do the temple work for the ones that his mother has information on, having talked to Abigail and had her tell the daughter-in-law who her siblings were? Is that enough information to do temple work, or does she have to wait until she in fact finds the birth certificate? So open up your microphones and tell me what you think. Michelle.
If that's all the information you can find, I think you can, but it's really not very wise. You should probably have at least 1 or 2 other records to verify their existence. That's my opinion. I'm not sure what.
That is Tanya's opinion, that my son-in-law's mother, that's her opinion. Now, I think one of the things to consider is, where did she get those names? She got those names that are in her Roots Magic file from her mother-in-law. Do you think her mother-in-law is a better source than what some other sources might be? Do you think you can give more credibility to a woman knowing who her own siblings are?
Yes.
If this record came from an unlabeled source, I would definitely agree with Michelle. Since this came from the sister of the siblings, I think I would tend to go with getting it done, especially if after due diligence we don't find other records. Now, are we at a point where we're finding records that we didn't find prior to March 21st? We are. Let's see what else we find as a result of what doors were opened on March 21st. But so the next step then for my son-in-law here is for me to get these records. He said his father could translate them, But he's been home from his vacation a week now, and his father has not translated them yet. Now, a week's not very long, and Brian tells me kind of in confidence that his dad's mental acuity is not quite as good as it was prior to his stroke. So therefore I say, let's not stress the father with getting the translation. Let's go ahead and have my friend do it. His father served a mission in Brazil, and learned and heard his mother talk Portuguese at home, but he himself has never studied Portuguese. In fact, he really didn't study Portuguese before his mission to Brazil. He went as an adult, and they had him do tutoring through an MTC missionary, but he didn't really ever study it. So I think that since this is so easily available to have done by a friend, that let's go on with that. My son-in-law is saying, I want my father to be involved as much as possible, so I don't want to take things away from him to do, but I know in my heart that these people are waiting for their temple work to be done. I need to do enough that I am not keeping the temple work to be done just because I don't want to step on my dad's toes. So what are the things that my son-in-law needs to do? We wrote down that he needs to keep talking to his father, that he needs to make sure that all of the sources that we have here are translated and attached, and that all of the clues from them are taken. Do you think we can be pretty sure that if it tells us who the parents are, that we have the right parents? Yes, this is an official government record. We can trust it. Do we always like it better if we have two records that tell us the same thing? Yes. If in fact, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go back to Family Search, and let's go to Search, and let's go to the card catalog, and let's under the card catalog, let's look up the name of the town, the name of the state. PERNG. I don't remember it, and I didn't write it down, even though I do have a piece of paper here. Oh, here it is. If we look up this place and we do a search for records, or we should have said Family History Center, it gives us quite a few things that we can look at. It does not give us very much in the way of church records. It gives us seven church records and 2 civil records. And if we look at these church records, we see that a couple of them are from people from Holland that settled in this state of Brazil, and some are the Church of England records for people that lived in this state of Brazil. There really are not very many Catholic records from this state in Brazil. And here we have to kind of study, and it would be easier if we did speak Spanish. So it's going to take some studying to go through and figure out which of these few places that are listed are maybe his church congregation of the church in Recife. And when I looked down before, I just did a quick look, and oh, here's one from Recife, and oh, here's a whole bunch in Recife. Oh, I missed those before. But are those the same little town as Recife? And how in Recife does he know which is the right church to look in? And have these records been indexed? If they've been indexed, we're going to, it says they are available online. Click here. And here it says that we have to browse through the images. So if we decide that this is a parish that we want to look at, we have to turn the microfilm page. Instead of turning the old reader like this, we just push the arrow button, but we have to go through 578,000 images looking for them. Now, of course, we narrow that down by date, and that will help us, but that is a lot of records. So that is one of the reasons why they tend not to be researched as much until they're indexed. How to use this collection. We should maybe read that. And I bet it takes us to the wiki. And it is going to tell us how to read these records, how to browse through them, and what do the records tell us. Now, how do we know which parish in England we want to look at? I don't mean England, in Brazil. I think, what are your thoughts on how, there's lots of Catholic churches. And Brian did say that his grandmother was Catholic before she joined the church. And like I said, she was in her 80s before she joined the church. So, was she 80s? Anyway, she was older. So how do we know what parish? Somebody besides John give me an answer, and then we'll ask John. How do you guess? I think one thing we do is we go back to the birth certificate. Now, the birth certificate says that she resides at the following address in this district, but it does not tell us what the district is. That means if we go back to the microfilmed pages, the digitized pages, and look at the top of the page, it might tell us the district. If not, we can go back page by page till we get to the beginning of the district and then see what the district was. Is the district going to tell us for sure what Catholic church they went to? No. If it was England, we have a book at our Family History Center that helps us figure out if you live in this place, this is the parish that it's going to be. But I don't think that I don't know if they have any such thing as Brazil, and we definitely don't have it in our family groups, in our Family History Center. So John, what would you do to figure out which Catholic church to look at?
Well, it gives you the city of their birth. And back in the further longest go back, each city would have probably had a little village had a Catholic church. And then if they don't, you look at the nearest. The Catholics have records of the diocese that is like a stake or an area of all of the churches that are in that particular diocese, and you can go and look in there, and sometimes you just have to check on all of them in the whole area.
Okay.
It's
So if it's not yet indexed, it becomes a hunting expedition.
Yeah, the original record of any birth certificate or christening will tell you the name of the church where it's taking place. So that identifies right there where you could go into these original records and find. So, that's how the Catholics set everything up, was, that in most of the records say in this location, in this parish, by this particular priest or whatever, and on this date, this ordinance was performed. So that's right normally in the first paragraph of the original record. You just have to
figure out which is the first page of the original record, maybe.
Well, yeah.
I think that the fathers in the Catholic Church had no clue what a wonderful thing they were doing for us when they recorded these births as they did christenings. Just as this birth record lists not only the parents but the grandparents, that's the same with most of the Catholic Church and Church. I don't know about Church of England, but Catholic Church records in South America, Central and South America. And so then you keep going in the church records. If you know that the children were born on such and such a day, and you go through and find all of the children's birth records, then you look up the parents' birth records. Then the parents' birth records, or the parents' marriage license first, then the parents' birth records, and they probably didn't move too much from village to village, is going to list their grandparents. And then you can go through and get the children and the marriage information. And then that's going to tell you their parents. And so that is often a very big boon, is it not, John?
Yeah.
In looking at the Catholic records,
And that,
is you can go back. They just didn't move around like we did, and you can go back and go back and go back.
but marriage is always, the marriage record always told, like the one that you used as an example, it told where the family was from, the original. It says naturally from. It usually will, if they're not, if they're from the same little village or parish, it'll tell you. And if they're not, it'll tell you where the original family was from. Like in both natural from, in that last sentence, both natural from Pernambuco and residents. Okay, so they're telling you there, these people are from this state and residents in this city.
In Recife, yeah.
So, and each one will tell you that, and then the other things up here probably are not, don't seem to say, but let me make one interesting comment here. You complimented the priests, and in this record as index, they only throw in this first part, the names of the two people who are getting married, and hardly ever put anything in about the parents or the grandparents. You have to go to the original record because our indexers don't put enough information in that's in the actual, and I've indexed and you know what they put in. You just are told to put in certain things.
That you're only given permission to put in certain things.
Right.
They only have certain fields for you to fill in.
Right, and that's ridiculous in the Catholic records, because this record would be a gold mine to find, and it's exactly the same kind of record in any marriage. I'm looking at some in the 1600s, and it's the same format used, but in indexing, you only get the first couple lines. You don't get everything else, which is really what you need, because you want to find out who the parents are and where they came from. And that gives you a lead to the grandparents. And many times, like in this one, it'll throw in the grandparents, and you got 2-3 generations in one ordinance, but our indexers don't do that.
And the indexers can only index what the people at Family History Headquarters decide are the appropriate things to ask the indexer to find.
Right, yeah.
So that's why we have brains, and we have to use them by looking at the original record, the image, and not just what the indexed record is.
Yeah.
Also, we still have to figure out who these witnesses are. We've gathered that they probably are relatives on the father's side and on the mother's side, but gee, that just might give us more links to more children or another generation back.
But that's almost I'm told a loss. It's like if you're a young couple and getting married in the temple and you don't have family with you, what do? They call somebody in from who's walking through the halls and say, "Will you witness this marriage?"
An example, when we got married, no one from my husband's family was there. So as our second witness, my roommate's husband, they got married a couple of months before us, was Charles's witness. And so that is an example of that happening.
And in these little villages years ago, maybe the family traveled 30 miles on a donkey or walking to get their baby blessed, or else the baby would go to hell. And so they would make that effort, and they didn't know anybody. So whoever's standing in the church, whether they are or not related, could be a witness according to the priest.
And so it's not always going to be relatives, but it often is. That just reminds me of something unrelated, sort of. One of the things we were trained to do in nurses training was baptize a Catholic baby, so that Catholic baby would not go to hell. It was better to be baptized by a non-Catholic nurse than by nobody.
Yeah.
So that was part of our training when we were studying ROB class in nursing school.
I don't mean to interrupt, but did you say you wanted to do something at 8?
Not me. Who? Oh,
I don't know if you're aware, Nancy, but it's 8 o'clock.
then it's time to stop. So, what have we accomplished tonight's lesson? I hope we have walked you through some steps that you would take as you work on following through with a research problem. I also hope that you understand that our Father in heaven can inspire us and assist us in every step of the way as we are doing family history. As he testified to my son-in-law that this was something he should be doing and he needed to do, and it was such a strong impression, and he didn't want me to see him cry, that he left the room when we had been talking about family history. And it's why he talked to his dad, and I believe it's why one Sunday later, was less than a Sunday later, 2 more siblings had been added by somebody he doesn't know. The Lord wants this work done. He wants us to do it. And he will bless us by guiding us and helping us along the way. I think that for us to know that and believe that is more important than the specifics in this particular case. But I do believe that this particular case very clearly illustrates it. I had another illustration I was going to do if we had time. Obviously, we don't have time. I thank you for coming. Let's see if anybody has any more comments, and if none, then we'll have a closing prayer.
I put the link to that Easter message in the chat area. So if anybody wants that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's.
Maybe you could unshare your screen, Nancy, and then we can see everybody.
Okay, let me find my mouse. Stop the share.
There we go.
And I also want to see what else is on the chat besides that. Yes, the Kansas City's temple is in Missouri. Most of Kansas City is in Missouri. Very little of Kansas City is in Kansas. And there's the link. Okay. No other comments in that case.